Well, welcome everyone to another video, and today we're going to take a look at the moveset update for this season of Go Battle League. So the theme of this season is Delightful Days, and it will run from June 5th, 2025 at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time and run all the way through September 4th at 1 p.m. So for those in Malaysia or in the GMT plus 8 time zone, that would mean that it will start from June 6, 2025 at 4 a.m. and run all the way through September 5th, 2025 at 4 a.m. So by the time this video drop, the season would have been underway, and for some of you, you are most probably already playing your sets. So going on to the attack changes for this season, we are going to start off with the fast move, and the first one is Ember. So what happened for this season is that Ember has an increase of 1 energy generation, which means that now it has quite good energy generation. I think it's the best fire type energy generation after Incinerate. That means it will be better than Fire Spin right now. And who will be the winners for this fast move update? It will be the Kanto Ninetales, Charizard, and Sunny Castform. So before this, Charizard and Ninetales have been flipping through their charge moves. So Ninetales flipping between Fire Spin and Ember, while Charizard is flipping between Wing Attack, Dragon Breath, Fire Spin, as well as Ember. So now there is a massive upgrade to their fast move arsenal, and Ember has become a far superior fast move option for all three of these. So who are the losers of this fast move update? You have the likes of Fortress, Ferrothorn, and Jumpluff. These three Pokemons have been quite the staple of Go Battle League for this past season, and with Ember being buffed, you will see all these Pokemons, they might have a decrease in their usage, especially those Fortress and Froton with that double super effective damage from fire type moves. So going on to the next fast move is Bug Bite. So what happened to Bug Bite this season is that it has an increased damage of 1. So now it has become basically the Ice Fang clone, or currently Counter also has the same stats. So more or less it has it does help in terms of the damage output, because bugs are generally a very weak type resisted by a lot of typings, and this could help it just to make it a little bit more viable in the current meta. So who are the winners for this? Is Fortress, in my view, is the big winner, as well as Araquanid and Ladian. So Fortress, they had access to Volt Switch last season, if I recall correctly, or was it the season before? And Volt Switch is a very good fast move. However, it is non-stab, and now with Bug Bite, it does have a very powerful bug type move that it can use as a fast move, and Araquanid as well. Bug Bite being its only viable fast move, this will help it in some team cups, probably, especially in team cups where there are a lot of psychic or dark type Pokemon, even grass types for that matter. And for Ladian, Ladian is just a Pokemon at the wrong place at the wrong time. When it got access to Counter, Counter was nerfed. Instead of being the all-powerful fast move, it just becomes quite mid. And with this Bug Bite buff, it could have some play, maybe, especially with access to Axizar, Aerial Ace, as well as Dynamic Punch. And the losers for this fast move update would be Malamar, Grumpig, and Sableye, because all these three will, in the case of Malamar, they will take a double super effective damage from bug type moves. Grumpig will take a single super effective from bug types, and Sableye will take neutral from this. And what all three winners of this bug bite buff have is that they have hard hitting moves that can also one shot all these Pokemon such as Malamar or Grumpig, especially after the fast move damage. and therefore they will have a chance to sort of break the dominance of Melamar that it had from this previous season. The next one is Fury Cutter. So Fury Cutter is also another bug type Pokemon. Bug types getting a lot of love this season. So what happened was the damage was increased by 1, which means that now it is a Psywave clone. So you all know how Psywave is very good on things such as Melamar and Lapras with that insane energy generation as well as high damage output. And now Fury Cutter has the same thing. So who are the winners for this? It is Golisopod, Samurott, as well as Gligar, and to a certain extent Gliscor as well. And I will tell you why Gligar is the one that benefits more compared to Gliscor. So first off, Golisopod. Golisopod before this runs Shadow Claw as its fast move of choice. Now you have an option to run Fury Cutter for a little bit more damage output from that step output, which could flip some matchups. But of course, with running Fury Cutter instead of Shadow Claw, it means that it will have to let go of certain ghost type matchups such as the Jellicent. And you have the Samurott with Fury Cutter. Samurott has a quite decent options of charge moves with Hydro Cannon, Mega Horn, and if I'm not mistaken, as well as Blizzard. Correct me if I am wrong. And with Fury Cutter's additional damage, it could also incentivize more people to use it in some team cups. And the last one is Gligar. Gligar has access to Fury Cutter and Wing Attack. So the reason why this benefits more than Gliscor, its evolution, is because Gliscor also has access to Sand Attack, which is a stab ground type move, which does relatively similar in terms of energy generation and damage if after you consider stab. And Gligar does not have that option, right? It does not have access to Sand Attack, and therefore Fury Cutter would be the better option, especially to hit those aerial aces and dig. And who are the losers for this Fury Cutter fast move? It's relatively similar to Bug Bite. However, we will change it up and say that Claydol is also something that will lose out on this, especially with the winners that I feel get the most benefit from the Fury Cutter buff, because Claydol in this instance will take super effective damage in the case of Golisopod and Samurott from their Aqua Jet, Axizor, or even Hydro Cannon, as well as not being able to do a lot of damage against the Gligar, with Gligar's flying type double resisting, for that matter, the ground type attacks from Claydol. So going on to the next fast move that has the buff is the fast move Acid. So Acid has been a horrendous fast move before this season, with, as you can see here, with 6 damage and 5 energy generation, and it's a 2-turn fast move, which means that it has a very pitiful 2.5 energy generations per turn. But now it saw a huge energy generation buff, an energy generation buff of 3 points right there, which means that it is now a Shadow Claw clone. So Shadow Claw is an extremely good fast move, and therefore it will do a lot for those Pokemon that have access to it. So who are the winners for the Acid's fast move buff? In my view, the first one is Victory Bell, the second is Regalgi, and the third is Tentacruel. So Victory Bell before this only has access to viable grass fast moves such as Magical Leaf or even Magical Leaf or Razor Leaf, but now it has Acid, which will lead it to be able to spam those powerful Leaf Blades and Sludge Bombs against the opponents, and maybe take a shield or two along the way before it goes down. And Regalgi with Acid means that it has a Step Poison type move as an alternative to Dragon Tail, which is very clunky and is not very consistent in terms of damage output, whereas Acid here will let it generate a lot of energy to dish out those consistent Aqua Tails, Outrage, or even Sludge Bombs against the opponents. And Tentacruel the bulky poison water type having access to acid means that they will be able to spam those high energy charge moves that it has in its arsenal, such as Scald, Hydro Pump, Blizzard, or even Gunshot. I think it has Gunshot. Yeah, so those moves could, this acid buff especially could be beneficial for Tentacruel to spam up all those hard hitting charge moves against their opponents, and yeah, could do considerable damage against them if they do not have the proper counters for Tentacruel. So who are the losers for this acid fast move buff? In my view, Azumarill, Jumpluff, and Alolan Ninetales is the losers of this fast move update. Azumarill has been hit hard, especially in this previous few seasons, especially with updates to grass types or even poison type moves. And Azumarill here has even less place to go with acid being buffed, which means that it can no longer reliably take shields out from things such as the Victory Bell or even the Dragalge for that matter. Jumpluff also as well, already having a hard Jumpluff having access to Fairy Wind and Acrobatics do help it against Victory Bell. And Dragalge, however, with Acid's buff, it will make it harder for Jumpluff to counter this Pokemon, and Alolan Ninetales just has nowhere to go, getting hard countered by Tentacruel, and Victory Bell and Dragalge now has a way to counter it back. So Alolan Ninetales will have to use some shields in order to fight back. And the next fast move update is to the move Bullet Punch. So Bullet Punch has an increase in damage by 2, which means that now it is also a Sucker Punch clone. Who does it benefit? Bullet Punch? Well, it's a very limited amount of Pokemon that can actually benefit from it. But the ones that benefited the most are Scizor and Metagross. Of course, both of these Pokemons do have access to Fury Cutter, but I believe that Bullet Punch is still a good option for it to use, especially for Scizor in Ultra League as well as Metagross in the Master League. Metagross being one of the few harder checks to those fairy types, such as the normal Zacian or even Xerneas. So who are the losers for this fast move update is generally the fairy types. Like I said, things such as Xerneas or Zacian will have a hard time, and in the Master League against this buff, and in the Ultra League you have things such as the Clefable or even Alolan Ninetales will also have a hard time against these Pokemon, as well as Cradily. So Cradily being quite relevant in the Great League, and to a certain extent it is being used in Ultra League, would have a harder time, especially with Scizor having that sky high attack stat, could delete it quite easily before the Cradily gets to a Rock Tomb. And now with the additional damage, it means that even if it misses on the Axizor and does get debuffed by Rock Tomb, they will have done considerable amount of damage before going down. So to the next one, we have the fast move Metal Sound. Metal Sound was quite a mid fast move with a mediocre damage output, but now it does have a 2-point buff to its damage, meaning now it also has become a relatively good fast move. I think if I'm not mistaken, it has a relatively similar energy per turn and damage per turn as Powder Snow. Correct me if I'm wrong as well, but I think it is quite a decent fast move now, which can be used by these Pokemons the most in the form of King Gambit, Bronzong, and Aggron. So King Gambit before this will be using the move Snarl, which is of course still a very good fast move. However, Metal Sound being a steel type move, it is largely unresisted by the meta, and it will generate a more consistent amount of damage, and it will give King Gambit a more consistent charge attack, how do you say it, timing, and the same as Bronzong and Aggron. Bronzong and Aggron before this has access to very slow energy generation from Confusion and Dragon Tail respectively. With the access to Metal Sound, it just makes them a lot more useful in the long run, especially with Aggron having access to those hard hitting moves in the form of Thunder, Rock Tomb, and I think they have a Steel type move. I'm not sure what it was, but those are very good moves to use. But it's just they needed a very high energy generation, which Metal Sound provides. So who are the losers for the Metal Sound fast move buff is Fairy types as well as Lapras. So why Lapras in this instance is going to have a bad time is because with Bronzong and Aggron, and as well as King Gambit getting the buff from Metal Sound, it just makes it a whole lot easier to deal damage against Lapras. They will have a higher fast move pressure against Lapras, as well as easier time to dish out those charge moves that will hit Lapras for neutral damage. And Lapras having Psywave as its fast move of choice will be at least single resisted by all three of our winners here. So in terms of charge moves, the first charge move that was buffed was Double Iron Bash. So Double Iron Bash is an exclusive move that is available to Melmetal. So the damage was increased by 5 points. However, of course, the only winner is Melmetal in this case. However, the move update doesn't change that much. It's hard to find a loser for this charge move other than maybe Fairy types and Credili in this update, because of course Fairy types, as it is, already has a hard time against Melmetal. It just means that now it will be harder for them. They will just lose a bit faster, right, against Melmetal. I think that's the easiest way to say it. And with Double Iron Bash having a buff, maybe we see a bit more Melmetal in the lower leagues, especially in Great League and Ultra League, where Credili is more prevalent and it can take those out relatively quickly as well, especially when it resists all of the fast move and charge move options that Credili usually runs. So the next move that was updated is also another one which I don't think matters that much, in the form of Doom Desire. It is the exclusive move of Jirachi, the mythical Pokemon, and it also has a 5 damage increase in its stats, right? So now it has a damage per energy ratio of 2.0, and of course the winner is Jirachi because that's the only Pokemon that has access to it. And same thing as before with the Melmetal and Double Iron Bash, Fairy types will have would be hurt the most in this particular instance, and I don't see anything else that really matters in the calculations, because in the current state of Doom's Desire, what and how slow it charges with Jirachi having only access to Confusion, I think, yeah, it won't affect other matchups that much. And going on to the next charge move, we have the move Crunch. So for this move, there wasn't that much of a change in its stats. The stats actually didn't change at all. It's just that the chance of getting a -1 in the opponent's defense dropped from 30% to 10%. So in terms of the winners, it is quite hard to say who are the winners for this charge move debuff. However, the losers are Drapion and Skuntank, because both of these Pokemon are lacking in better charge move options or alternatives. So Drapion usually runs Aqua Tail and Crunch, while Skuntank usually runs Trailblaze as well as the Crunch. Of course, both of these Pokemon have access to Sludge Bomb. However, it is not a coverage that is mostly used by them. they would prefer to use crunch, especially to hit those ghost types that would generally not take any damage from its fast move, whether it's poison sting or poison jab. So the next charge move that will be updated for this season is the moveset Wrap. Wrap is a Pokemon that is generally given to either octopus-like Pokemon or even snake-like Pokemon. So the buff that I got is it has a secondary effect now of 100% chance of decreasing opponent's defense by 1 stage. However, because of the access being very limited to non final stage evolutions, the winners for this is quite hard to get. But in terms of the general leagues of Great, Ultra, and Master League, the only winner that I can think of would be Servine. But even then, also there's very little amount of Pokemon that have access to Wrap, that have access to even Great League for that matter. But Servine, because of its lack of better charge move options for coverage, I think is the only one that will benefit from the charge move Wrap. However, the losers for it will also mean that we are unable to find out who are actually the biggest losers for this update, because as you can see here, Wrap doesn't have that much utility and the stats are actually quite horrible. So I don't think any Pokemon who have other options would necessarily use Wrap at the expense of maybe better charge move options that they have. So the last charge move update would be Parabolic Charge. So what happened to Parabolic Charge is that it became a little bit cheaper, requiring 5 less energy, and now instead of having a chance of a defense increase, it is now a guaranteed increase in their own defense by 1 stage, which means that all three of the Parabolic Charge users in the form of Bellibolt, Dedenne, and Heliolisk will reap the benefits from it. So as you can so if any of you do look up online on the rankings of Pokemons, you can see that Bellibolt, being the tank that it is, has already shot up to number 1 on the Ultra League rankings, and that is for good reason, because its tankiness, in addition to Parabolic Charge boosting even further, means that it will be very hard to take it out before it does considerable amount of damage. And the losers for this, in my opinion, based on the Pokemon's use from previous seasons, would be Mandibuzz as well as Togetic. So why these two in particular? Mandibuzz, because Mandibuzz has a very low attack stat right now, and with this move being able to buff your own defense means that opposing Mandibuzz will have a harder time to take you out, and they will have to switch out as soon as possible, and hopefully they have 2 good Pokemons that are able to beat out this electric type Pokemons, because if you are letting it get to maybe even 2 buffs, it could get out of hand, especially with the coverage moves that it has in the instance of Dedenne in Heliolisk. And Togetic, because it is one of the few flyers that is actually gaining in relevance from past seasons, I feel like it's going to be toned down a few pegs because of this update, and because Mandibuzz will also be scared away by this Parabolic Charge update. I feel like Togetic will also not have any incentives to be used in the Great League. So that's all for the attack updates. So now we are going to look at the attack additions and where do we rank them in the grand scheme of things, right? So let's look at this. So the first one, we have Goldengo with access to Power Gem. So right now, if I'm mistaken, it's running Astonish, Shadow Ball, and Focus Blast. Power Gem just gives it a better coverage, especially against those flyers such as the Yveltal or even Gyarados, or even against ice types that are currently quite prevalent in the Master League, such as Kyurem White or Kyurem Black. I feel like this is a very good addition to its move pool. So I would say that it will go into the A tier. I know Goldengo right now is very broken in the Premier Master League. However, it is what it is, right? It just has a very good typing and a very good moveset. There's nothing much that we can do other than try to get a counter team that might be able to beat it out as fast as possible before it can run rampage against your team. And the next one is Lunala with access to Shadow Claw. Lunala before this only has access to the fast move Confusion, which generally is very bad for it because its charge moves require a lot of energy. But now with access to Shadow Claw, it just props up from like outside the top 100 of Master League all the way up to like the top 10 in the rankings of Master League, and it's just a very huge buff for it, and it's a very much needed one, and therefore it will go into the S tier. That being the best update possible for Lunala right now is that a fast move that can make it dish out all those heavy eating charge moves that it has. Now Scaladurge is another one that got added, that got a move set added to it in the form of Hex. Hex is a ghost type fast move that it can use. However, Incinerate is just a super good fast move of choice, maybe in certain team cups where Incinerate's usual targets are not there. Maybe it has some uses, but right now I just don't see it as that much of a improvement. I would say that it will be considered as maybe a C tier in this instance because it just doesn't improve it in any shape or form. So Beedrill is the next one. It has access now to Poison Sting. Poison Sting being a supremely good energy generating poison type move. Beedrill having access to Bug Bite and Poison Jab before this now can hit the opponents with those extremely good Axes and Drill Run even faster. However, its typing and its stats are quite bad, even though the moveset is quite good. I would say that it will also be in the C tier. I mean, it will benefit it, but I don't think that people will somehow magically start using it right now. So you go into the C. Arbok now also has access to Poison Sting. We are going through all the Pokemons that have Poison Sting now. Arbok having access to Poison Sting is quite okay. I mean, before this it was using Dragon Tail. However, the issue with Arbok is its charge moves as well as its stats and typing. Being a normal poison type, it is definitely overshadowed by something like even a Swalot, because Swalot at least has bulk going for it, whereas Arbok does not. And therefore, even with Poison Sting, I don't think it would do that much to improve it. So it will go into the D tier. I think it doesn't help at all, right? So Nidoqueen also has Poison Sting, but Nidoqueen has an incredible charge move options in the form of Stone Edge, Earth Power, Earthquake, as well as Poison Fang. And with access to Poison Sting, now it will be able to go for the double nuke moveset, and I think it will benefit it, especially with Clodsire, and maybe can be used as a safe swap in a double poison ground team with Clodsire in certain matchups, and for that I think you will go into the A tier. And in terms of Nidoking, I think Nidoking, because of its attack weighted nature, I think it will not benefit as much on the Poison Sting buff. Right now it already has access to a quite decent fast move in the form of double kick, but its combination of charge move is has a lot to be desired. It does not have the coverage that Nidoqueen has. It only has access to, I think, Mega Horn as a coverage move, and it's not that good. Maybe you can use it in certain instances, just try it out, but I don't think it benefits it that much. So with that, I think it goes to C. And for Tentacruel, also has access to Poison Sting now, will be able to dish out those nuke moves as fast as possible, and I feel like it will benefit quite a lot. However, it is also purely situational, with the meta right now having a lot of ground types, such as Gastrodon, such as Kanto Marowak. I feel like you will find a very hard time to find a position for it in the meta. But I see that it can be used in certain instances, and if you do team build quite well, I can see it having some impact down the line, especially at the later parts of the season when the meta sets. So therefore, I think it will go into the B tier. So Toxicroak with Poison Sting. So I think Pokemon Go in general has been trying to bring Toxicroak back into the meta, especially after the counter moves, fast move was nerfed. First by giving it Mud Shot, and then after that giving it Poison Sting. Poison Sting being far better than Mud Shot in terms of energy generation, and it is a step fast move, which means that now it can dish out those extremely good dynamic punches as well as Shadow Ball quite frequently. Of course, its typing of fighting and poison does hinder it against something like a Malamar or Lapras that has access to Psywave, which is double super effective against it. But it may find a place for it in the meta somewhere down the line. And for that, I think it's also going to be in the B tier. Maybe not as high as Tentacruel, but it will have a place for it. So now we have Scolipede. So Scolipede also has access to Poison Sting, but it also has the same typing as Beedrill with Poison and Bug. However, the difference between Beedrill and Scolipede is that Scolipede does not have any coverage moves other meaningful charge moves other than ones of its own typing. So for that, I think it will also go into the C tier, somewhere below Beedrill as well. And now we have the two Raichus, right? So the Kanto Raichu as well as Alolan Raichu, both of these will have access to the moveset Surf. It is a fairly good how do you say it, coverage against ground types, as well as giving it an additional option against those fire types that are not flying, such as the Skeledirge. So I feel like Alolan Raichu will have a better time with this, because it has that subtyping of Psychic, so it has a little bit more resistances and could fight those other Pokemons better. I think that would be somewhere in the B tier. However, for Kanto Raichu, sadly, I don't think it will matter as much, and I think it will just go into a D tier. Celio as well has access to the moves Surf. Celio was in dire need of better charge move options, because before this he has access to only Body Slam as a decently good charge move. Now it has access to Surf, which means that it can run that with Powder Snow as its fast move for a generally good overall coverage. It may not have that much usage right now because Lapras and Dugong are far better. However, I can see it being used in maybe a remix format where other ice water types might be banned, and for that I think it will go into the B tier. Galarian Meowth has access to Metal Sound, so I'm not sure how this is relevant for us. Maybe in Little Cup. However, because I don't think this season has any Little Cup, so and I don't think in the future that there's not that much emphasis in Little Cup, so I don't think Galarian Meowth getting access to Metal Sound does benefit anyone anyhow. So that is a very irrelevant update in my view. However, for Aron is a very classy Pokemon if you want to pump it up to level 50. It's a decently good typing with Rock and Steel. However, the double weakness to fighting and especially ground makes it quite hard to use in the Great League. And even with Metal Sound, Body Slam, and Rock Tomb, it does not have any utility or usage whatsoever because there are better Pokemons for the role that you want it to do, whether it's as anti-fairy or whether it's anti-flyer. You have better Pokemons that are able to do the same job, and therefore it will go with Galarian Meowth in the D tier. Lyron, on the other hand, it's a bit better than Aron, where it can go to 1500 CP, and it also has access to Body Slam and Rock Tomb, so it is quite decent there. However, again, the typing is just quite horrible for the Great League in particular at this moment. However, because it is better than Aron, I feel like there will be some usage to some people, and it will go to the C tier. And Aggron, and the big boy Aggron also has access to Metal Sound. Aggron is mostly used in the Master League. I feel like Aggron with access to Metal Sound could be decent in certain situations. However, because of its typing, it might not necessarily have what it takes to hang on for long. And for that, I think it will go somewhere, I think the high C's as well, maybe not as high as Skeledirge, but maybe right below that. Delmise having a double buffed with Wrap as well as Metal Sound. I think Metal Sound will just give it a side grade to Shadow Claw. Shadow Claw is already quite good and is a step option for Delmise, and Wrap is not something that you will want to use with Delmise unless if you want to have a cheap bait option. But even so, saying that Wrap is a cheap move is stretching it quite a bit. So in that instance, I feel like the updates to Delmise is actually quite bad and only goes to the C tier, because the issue is its charge moves, and Wrap is just not something that sways the scales that much. Berserker, on the other hand, having access to Metal Sound makes it a little bit more interesting because it's a step fast move. Of course, it has access to Shadow Claw, but having access to Metal Sound makes it a little bit more of a niche steel type attacker. It can dish out a lot more consistent damage against ice types or even fairy types. So I feel like in certain situations it can be very beneficial, and I would put it somewhere in the B tier. So Varoom and Revavroom, if I'm mistaken, also has access to Metal Sound. The issue with this Pokemon is its general bulk, and the typing is just so horrible. Steel and Poison type being double super effective to ground is double super effective from ground type moves is just ridiculously bad, right? I feel like Aggron and Lyron at least stand a chance, but Varoom and Revavroom just does not, even with this update. So with that, we get tossed all the way down to the D tier. And now you have the Pommy line, which got a community day, I think, last season with access to Brick Break, if I'm not mistaken, for Pomod. So Pommy, of course, low stats, won't get any usage whatsoever from the additional of Thundershock, whereas Pomo and Pomod will definitely benefit from it. Pomo might not get that much utility because of its stats, so you go to C tier. However, for Pomod, with Thundershock, Brick Break, this community move, as well as Wild Charge, it could have some utility. So therefore, it will go into the B tier and join Alolan Raichu there. Lickitung has access to Wrap now. Wrap is quite okay. But would I swap out Body Slam for Wrap? Maybe in certain situations, yes. However, Body Slam is still a relatively good charge move option. So maybe I put it in B as well. Wrap. So going on to the next one, we have Milotic also with access to Wrap now. However, with access to Surf, Blizzard, as well as Hydro Pump if I'm mistaken, and as well as Hyper Beam. Is it something that you want to replace with to get Wrap? What do you replace if you want to put Wrap, right? Are you going to replace Blizzard? Blizzard is such a good coverage option for Milotic. However, and do you want to substitute Surf? Maybe not, because Surf is the only like decently good charge of water step move that it has. I don't think you want to go with Hydro Pump, and therefore Wrap does not help Milotic as much. Maybe a fast move update would be good for it, but with Wrap, maybe it's a somewhere in the D tier. Maybe it's a high D tier, or maybe low C, I guess. Yeah, low C I think is quite manageable for it. Maybe in niche situations you can use Wrap with Milotic. And the next four Pokemons, we have the legendary birds, and they have access to the move Fly. So with Galarian Articuno having access to Fly could be decent, because right now I think all of the three Galarian birds have access to Brave Bird. So maybe for Articuno in particular, you want to use Fly. However, you want to use Fly instead of Ancient Power. It could give it a decent coverage against grass types that are not resist psychic type moves, maybe such as a Shiftry or Cacturn. Maybe we can have some usage. So, but Articuno right now maybe have an increase in viability, but I think that it will be somewhere in the high C's. I just don't see it being used as much right now. But in terms of Galarian Zapdos, now this is a fairly interesting Pokemon. I mean, it has access to counter close combat, and if I'm not mistaken, Fly also will also need 45 energy, the same as close combat. So it will be a very fun thing for Galarian Zapdos to have. Fly hits like a truck. Zapdos has a decently high attack stat, and with that, I think it will have a lot of usage for it. So I would put it maybe in the somewhere high B's, definitely the highest B, I think, right? So in terms of Galarian Moltres, the dark flying type, right now you usually run if I'm mistaken, you would run what was that dark type move? Payback, or is it? Yeah, Payback with Ancient Power or Brave Bird. I think Fly just gives it a better option and better coverage move compared to Brave Bird. It will not give it the debuff, which is very good, especially when your typing is just very good in general. And with that, I think it goes up to the A tier. I think it will have a lot of benefits down the line, especially when people figure out how to use it. And Lugia as well will also benefit a lot from Fly, because after they buff Sky Attack being a 50 move was it 50 or 55 energy move, is just destroyed Lugia from being any from having any viability in the Master League or even in the Great League for that matter. But with Fly, it at least gives an alternative for a cheaper flying type move to use alongside Aero Blast, and I think it's a very good addition to Lugia, and it will also go into the A tier alongside Galarian Moltres. So now we go to the last three Pokemon, and all three Pokemon have access now to Fury Cutter. So Fury Cutter, definitely a straight up very good move for Metang, the middle state evolution for Beldum. Now, because before this, it only has the only good fast move it has is Metal Claw, and Fury Cutter is just so much better. The purified version can run Return, and or even if you want to go with the Shadow variant, you can run something like, I think that's a Steel type charge move. I think with Psyshock as well as an alternative. So yeah, it's quite good. I think this is one of the better updates. Metang definitely got super good with it, and it will, and it automatically improves it and will go into the S tier. I think it will find very it will have a lot of usage now in the Great League, at the only league that it can be accessible to, right, because of its stats. And Metagross also has access to Fury Cutter. It gives it a very viable alternative to Bullet Punch. Fury Cutter, of course, will give it a better coverage against Psychic type moves and Dark types. So you might be able to see it in the Master League using Fury Cutter as opposed to Bullet Punch in certain instances, depending on the team composition. But yeah, I think it will also be in the high A tier, not necessarily as high as Metang, because Metagross already has a very good fast move in the form of Bullet Punch, whereas Metang did not have a very good fast move before this. And the last Pokemon is Cleavor, a rock and bug type Pokemon, split evolution of Scyther from Hisui, if I'm not mistaken. So before this, it only has quick attack as a very good fast move. Now it has access to Fury Cutter, a stab bug type move to dish out those Exorcist and Stone Edge with ease, and I think that it is a very good addition for it. However, because of its typing bug and rock, it just neutralizes any resistances that it might have had if it had either rock or bug, and because of that, I think it will be somewhere in the B tier, because its typing is just what hinders it back, even though the moveset is now going to be super good. And with that, we have come to the end of the video. Let me know what you would change from this ranking, which Pokemon you feel has the best upgrade for this season, and which Pokemon you think I should try out first. And with that, that is the rankings that I come up with, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.